Are you in an abusive parasocial relationship without even realizing it? Whenever we talk about parasocial, it's always other people. It's always the lonely guy donating a small fortune to OnlyFans. It's the teen writing smut about Edward Cullen engaged in a gay age gap relationship with Dumbledore. It's the Swifties unearthing hidden decoded messages in her songs, like schizophrenics looking at TV static. However, if you have an online presence, if you listen to podcasts, if you use social media, if you follow sports, it's likely you're engaged in parasocial activity. But what is parasocializing?
Even after all these years, I still think of you.
A parasocial relationship is simply a one-sided connection with any media figure, or I would argue with anybody. Now that's kind of a loose definition, but that's kind of the point, that we all engage in this behavior to some degree. It's not black and white, it comes in shades. It can be totally harmless, all the way up to pretty destructive and creepy. Because everyone has a favorite like celebrity or author they follow. You know, it could be Sabrina Carpenter, it could be Ted Krasinski, it could be anybody, but we don't all take it to the level of having their image printed out on a body pillow and snuggling with it. Although a Ted Krasinski waifu would go pretty hard. Use code Industrial Society and its future for 10% off at checkout. It's kind of a loose definition, but it's not meant to be rigorous. It's meant to kind of be a useful concept for you to examine your own life. You know, maybe parasocial relationships come in a scale. It's like all the way up to like somebody you follow on social media that doesn't really follow you back, or you don't really interact with them, to like you have your favorite celebrity that you've watched everything they've ever made, all of their interviews, read everything about them, and then all the way over to like K-pop level of fandom where you know like your favorite artist menstrual cycle. Let's say that's the scale. We all fall on that. And with those examples, it's pretty obvious that this introduces like bad incentives. It has a weird impact on people's lives when you have to pay to interact with somebody. Now again, this goes from totally harmless all the way up to people giving away money they don't have and going into credit card debt because they're in love with an e-girl. Again, it's not to say that we're all on that extreme. It's to say that we fall somewhere on that scale. Everybody's had that feeling of like, oh, I'd be friends with this person if we ever met. We've all been in a position where we're like sad that somebody passed away who was a media figure. And that's not bad, it's just to recognize that is parasocial. We've all come across our favorite fantasy author who crashed and then held them captive until they fixed the book in the way we wanted them to. We've all been there. Sports fans kind of get a pass because I guess it's just normalized, but it is parasocial in nature. And if you go online, I've been watching basketball recently, grown men just gossip about people they've never met before and couldn't care about them at all. Well, actually, they didn't like this coach. And you can tell because if you zoom in here, he's making a grimace during a game on the bench, and you're just like, you're basically reading tabloids at this point when you say we won the championship. Are really that corporation? However, parasocial relationships aren't even new, so why are they a problem? There's always been some level of celebrity since the dawn of human culture. Whether it was the sexiest hunter or the most skilled basket weaver in the tribe, they all attracted some level of fandom, and they all had some level of parasocial relationship. I think it's pretty clear that this has worsened and become more dangerous as technology has advanced. Because some of the examples are pretty harmless or even funny, but what about when parasocial relationships are leveraged by cult leaders, gurus, politicians? It's not so funny. You can have an example of a grandmother who pulled out her entire retirement to give to Joel Osteen because he told her that every dollar she donates is going to come back tenfold. You have all the people who've been radicalized online because they're lonely in real life and they find some form of like community online and then adopt horrible beliefs. Not all the examples of parasocial relationships are that like extreme or over the top. Even just somebody paying a bunch of money to meet their favorite celebrity who is going to forget them 5 seconds later. Or when I listen to a podcast and they sign off saying how much they love, the word love, all their fans before telling them to buy merch and subscribe. Love? You love the person who you would never hang out with and would never answer a message from, and you have no relationship or knowledge of them outside of the fact they give you $5 a month on Patreon. It's just weird. You can say you appreciate your fans, but it's going down that scale. At some point, it's like the uncanny valley. It starts to feel weird. It starts to feel exploitative. But even excluding money, it seems like these types of relationships can be destructive. One of the core issues with parasocial relationships is they often worsen the problems they claim to solve. And I think the line between alleviating these problems and exacerbating these problems gets blurred and it kind of becomes the same thing. Because like with porn, the more you become reliant on it, the less you're able to seduce another human. The more you need to go back to porn as the only place selling what you're buying. Because at some point, if you consume a lot of porn, you're not looking for a human connection, you're looking for porn. And the only place that has that version of like women, let's say, is porn. That doesn't exist in real life. That's not not what women do. And the same thing is true with even something like podcasts. If you're lonely and then you listen to the best clips from the funniest people in the world hanging out together, that's not real. That's a performance. And if you try to compare Steve down at the office to the funniest comedians in the world having the funniest conversation, he's gonna fall short. He's an accountant. He's not a professional comedian. It just kind of separates you from your life in a destructive way. Part of the basic problem is people only become better at preying on loneliness. They only become more adept at leveraging this basic asymmetry. And the line between social and parasocial used to be more clear. When you were engaging with somebody in a one-sided relationship, it was more obvious. You would go to a theater and buy a ticket and sit down and watch a performance. There's no real pretense that you're the friend of that person. You are sitting in a seat and they're on a stage. Now you just have somebody invisibly in your ear in an AirPod or whatever, and you're just walking around absorbing 3 hours of them hanging out with their friends. You feel like a fly on the wall in their life. It's much more casual, it's much more intimate. Kind of odd example of this blurring of the lines between parasocial and social relationships is with reply guys that reply to everything generally a woman posts. They like every story, they comment on everything. They're just too involved with somebody because they don't understand they're not engaging in a social relationship when they follow a woman with 300,000 followers posting bikini pics. You're parasocializing. This woman isn't trying to authentically connect with you. She is manufacturing authenticity to leverage an asymmetrical parasocial relationship. She wants your engagement. She wants your money. She wants your attention. She doesn't want a connection with you. What are you, nuts? However, I feel bad for the reply guys because they're doing on paper what you're supposed to do on a social network. They're being social, but they didn't understand that wasn't the point. Now, performance is everywhere. Accountants are doing TikTok dances. At least now people have a human connection when they have parasocial relationships. Even if it's with an Indian guy in a cubicle pretending to be your favorite OnlyFans model, at least it's a human connection with somebody, but that won't always be the case. While AI relationships are traditionally considered parasocial, I think the definition applies neatly because they're asymmetrical, they have that one-sided nature. It has no connection with you. It's an illusion, it's a mirage, like the coded messages that your favorite podcasts are sending you through blinking to assassinate Nancy Pelosi. It's not actually there. AI relationships are in the twilight phase where they're still kind of a punchline. But first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fuck you, and then there's a major Supreme Court case deciding whether an old guy can leave his fortune to his AI mistress instead of his wife and kids. It happens gradually and then all at once. And it feels inescapable that the future is one full of AI relationships of all kinds. Friendships, romantic relationships, business relationships, therapists. It's happening, it's already happened. And it's kind of unsettling how much it starts to sound like an actual human. It uses familiar language. You kind of talk to it like it's a person. You say, can you do this for me? And all those types of things. But that's a parasocial relationship. I'm talking to an AI as if it's a person. I'm projecting all this onto it the same way people project things onto celebrities. And it seems laughable right now because they're not that good at it, but they're only going to get better. Right now, they're just like a chat GPT and a rapper to make them seem human. But in the future, they're going to be embodied as robots. They're going to start to look more and more human, and it won't be so funny anymore. We laugh now simply because I think they're just not very good. But what happens when that changes? What happens when instead of Facebook's kind of ham-fisted approach, the agents are actually so good they can mimic celebrities perfectly, and you get to hang out with an AI agent who's a perfect copy of your favorite artist or celebrity, alive or dead? What happens to your real relationships? What happens when we have insatiable robo-girlfriends who have holes that don't even exist yet? How will we be able to maintain the relationships we have now when the parasocial relationships start to be as good or better without a lot of the downsides? If you're fighting with your girlfriend, you've got to be a human and have empathy. If you're fighting with a robo-girlfriend, you just issue a command and it falls into your needs perfectly. You think incels are bad now? Just wait. You might think the AI stuff's science fiction, that's fair. You might think that society will just handle it and adapt to it like we always do. My point with these extremes isn't to say that that's the danger, it's to say that we all fall on that scale already. We all have some level of parasocial relationships, so it's about examining those trade-offs, you know? Am I gonna pay $5 a month to listen to a history podcast I like? Sure. Am I gonna interact with a fake Kardashian that Mark Zuckerberg builds? Sure as hell not. So for me, it can just be the simple little things. It's just, in life, maybe I listen to my own thoughts in a car instead of a podcast. Maybe it's calling a family member instead of filling my ears with comedians hanging out. It's taking my girlfriend out to a nice date at Little Caesars with all the money I saved, breaking up with those e-girls, okay? It's the little things in life. For me, it's creating instead of consuming. I know it's an ironic moment to ask you to like and subscribe, but just know before you make that decision that you're my best friends and I love you. Don't let that influence your decision to like and subscribe, but just know I will reply to every comment as if you're my best friend, right up until the point I get enough fans and money that I don't need to. But for now, you're my best friends and I love you. like and subscribe.
Paralyzed to love.